All righty, Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Are we doing the presentation first or second?
Yeah, we can do the presentation first. Did you?
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, go for it.
Oh, okay, cool. Did you want to record?
Yeah, it's recording now.
Oh, okay, cool. Sorry, they had them minimized. All right. Well, the activity this month, we have our own David, WA7TY, is presenting his DIY field day presentation. So it should be an interesting field day this year. So David, well, off to you. Take it away, man.
Hey, thanks. Jim, can you give me the power to present? All right. Let's see. Hold on. Give me a moment while I try to remember how to do that. Let's see.
You mean you haven't been to enough Zoom meetings that you've done presentations?
I don't do a lot of Zoom. Yeah, it's interesting.
Should be a green icon on the bottom of the screen. It says share screen.
Yeah. I got it. I was just making sure this would start. All right. So, hey, thanks everyone for being here. Once again, it will be an interesting field day. Unfortunately, this year, looks like the state's going to open, what is it, like the day after field day? So we weren't able to secure all of the reservations and activity permits that we would normally get in order to do our normal field day. So I won't, for those of you that know what our normal field day is like, I won't spend any time crying about the greatness of it. And for those of you that are new, you can look forward to next year. We'll have a full presentation and we'll let you know all the details. But what I wanted to talk about today was how you can do field day without the main mic and key event. And this will be similar to last year, but with some minor changes. Some things have changed since last year. So we'll go through some of those changes. If I can get my slide to advance. There we go. Oh, it went backwards. Okay. Oh, I'm at the end. That's why. Hold on. Don't look. There we go. So what is field day? I know we have a lot of new people. I know we have a lot of people who maybe have heard of field day, but they've never done it themselves or always wished that they did. So you might be wondering, like, what is field day? Is it one of those contests? Is it complicated? Is it hard? Do I need special equipment? Whatever I have, is it no good for field day? I don't know. The thing that's interesting about field day is basically everything amateur radio related. You could participate in field day with your handy talkie. You could participate in field day with your ginormous station with a beam on top of a tower and everything in between. And field day occurs across almost all of the amateur radio bands. It doesn't occur on the WARC bands. That would be like 17 meters, 12 meters, but it occurs on all the other bands, including everything in the VHF and UHF realms. So things that we would normally do on a daily basis, like operating CW or sideband on 2 meters, happen on field day. Now they don't happen as much as the more traditional, banging out 1,000 contacts on 40 meters overnight or working 20 meters all day, but they happen. So field day is really an opportunity for you to get out, play with all of your equipment, blow the dust off that solar panel and that battery that you've got sitting in the garage, fire up that HF radio that maybe your significant other doesn't even know you bought, and actually use the darn thing, right? So that's the purpose of field day. It's to get out, operate, try out all your equipment, and it's with a special focus on trying it out in a portable or emergency configuration. And that might mean loading up all your gear, driving somewhere, maybe to a campground or a park, or and setting up portably. It might mean operating out of your car. It might mean operating out of your backyard. It may even mean just running your home station on battery power and seeing if you can make it all day. Things like that. But it's really wide open, and it's a simple contest, and it's easy to participate in. It's not complicated. It doesn't have too many complex rules. And it's really sort of a great way to kind of dabble in contesting and play with all your equipment. And you can take it very seriously, or you can take it not so seriously, and that's fine. So what's Field Day, the event itself? It's a nationwide event. It's about public service, but it's not exclusively about public service. It is really about getting on the air, trying your equipment out, learning how to operate effectively. It is not a contest technically, but we do keep score. So, read into that what you will. We'll go into a little bit about that more in a bit. But as I said, it's an opportunity to try out all your radio equipment and do all sorts of crazy stuff that you maybe wouldn't normally do on a day-to-day basis. So there are some rule changes for 2021 for Field Day. Last year, the rules were also amended for Field Day. The big change for those of you that are familiar with Field Day rules is normally a Class D station, a Class D station being your normal home station operating on commercial power. Normally a Class D station may only work non-Class D stations for points in Field Day. But for last year, they modified the rules and allowed Class D stations to make contacts with each other. So basically you could make a contact with anybody, whether they were Class D or something else, and get points. So that waiver has continued for this year. So if you want to just operate Field Day from home, you're welcome to do that. However, they did make one change. Class D and Class E stations, a Class E station is a home permanent installation station operating on emergency power, meaning like operating on like a battery backup or a generator. Class D and Class E stations are limited to 150 watts of PEP output. So basically what they realized, and if you participated in Field Day last year, particularly on sideband, you may have noticed that certain Class D stations, maybe at home with their beam and their amplifiers, were dominating from time to time and really washing out sometimes the Class A and Class B stations. And to be honest, the Class A and Class B stations are a bit more, the heart of Field Day, or sort of the spirit of Field Day, if you will. And I think so they modified the rule to put a power cap on those Class D and Class E stations. So hopefully they won't be drowning out the A's and B's as much as they did last year. So just a note for you guys, if any of you did that, with your home stations, if you spun the beam and fired up the Henry 3K, you're not going to be able to do that this year. So just keep that in mind. So another change from last year, which continues to this year, is that the ARL is recognizing an aggregate club score. So what does that mean? So in a normal Field Day year, we would do Field Day as a club. Everybody who's participating would come to our location. All of the transmitters and equipment would be within a circle of a certain radius in order to be counted as club stations. And then that group activity would have a score. And if you were a club member and you operated from somewhere else without the club, your score didn't contribute to the club score. You just had your own score, which you could submit. But last year and this year, the ARL modified the rules so that we can submit a club score. So they realized, hey, we can't get together as a group, but we're still participating together. So we can submit our individual scores and mark the club's name, and then they will publish an aggregate score. So this means that basically you can participate in Field Day and represent the club. You'll use your own call sign. You won't use the club call sign, but you can still, when you submit your score, have it contributed to the club score. And I apologize, there may be questions popping up, but I'm not reading them because I'm full screen. So if Jason or Jim want to stop me, if they see any important questions, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll just keep charging through this. So
yeah, I'll keep you going.
Thanks. So when we think about kind of doing Field Day, not as a group, a large group in one place, there's roughly 3 ways. Maybe there's 4 ways this year, but I kept the same slides as last year. There's basically 3 ways that you can participate. So one is you operate solo, or maybe you sucker your family members, but imagine, you jump in your car, you go to a campground somewhere, you just do your own thing. That's fine. I think actually for those who typically participate in the big Field Day activity, like myself, it's kind of neat to go out and do my own thing without, kind of the club to support me and all the other smart people around. It's really an interesting exercise. So I would, encourage anybody who's never done that. Maybe this would be a great opportunity to try it out. Throw a wire up in a tree, whatever you may do. So that's one option. The second option is you could host club members at your house or at a location that you're hosting. So if if you're vaccinated and everybody else is vaccinated and you're totally comfortable, hosting maybe people in your backyard, or maybe you own a ranch somewhere. I don't know. Maybe you bought that place in Colorado that's up. Well, I guess that wouldn't count. The one that was on the list, sorry. But if you want to host a group and be the person who's coordinating and maybe doing your own little field day operation, you're certainly welcome to do that. And I'll show you guys how you can submit your information. I'll be sharing the list of people who are hosting back out to the club on a regular basis over the coming weeks, so you can coordinate, you can become aware of who's going to be hosting, and you can coordinate with them and let them know, hey, I'm coming, do you have room for me, what do you what equipment do you need, that kind of thing. And then obviously the option number 3 would be what I just talked about, which is you could go visit a host location. So you could hook up with other club members who are hosting, and you could go operate at that location. I would also encourage people to consider that. That's a great option. It's probably going to give you a little bit of that, group field day experience, but you're not going to have to do it on your own. So maybe if you don't have an HF radio or you've never done this before, keep an eye out for the information that we're going to be posting about hosts, and it's an opportunity to kind of go and try it out. So I mentioned classes, and a lot of people, if you've never done field day before, what is a class? Like what the heck, what the heck are you talking about? Like, this sounds complicated. Fortunately for field day, it's pretty simple. So the one message I want to get across to anybody who I don't know, I'm just going to sit at home, right? If that's you, if you sit at home and you just operate from your home station and you don't do anything special, you're going to be 1D, 1 delta. So 1 transmitter at a time, running at home at your established station on commercial power. You're going to be 1D. That is one of 2 things you need to know to participate in field day. So if you're just at home, normal station, you're 1D. The other classes, just so you're familiar and maybe to explain them a little bit, I think there's one where sometimes people get a little confused. So a class A would be 3 or more people operating portable. Now, what does portable mean? So there's some interesting questions last year about, well, am I portable or am I home? How big does my backyard need to be before I'm, and how far do I need to walk before it becomes portable? So portable is meant to be you're operating outside of your normal environment. So the one way I've had it explained to me is, to be truly portable, you probably had to travel a little bit. You probably had to haul some equipment, from the car. You probably don't have access to a flushing toilet and a microwave. So portable is like you've gone to a park or you've gone to, some place where you wouldn't normally operate, in some place where you're not going to have access to sort of the normal amenities. So like me, for example, if I operate in my backyard, and I set up everything portable and I run off solar and battery power, but I can still go in the house and sleep inside and, use the kitchen, I'm probably going to be a 1E rather than a 1A. So just think about that. So I would be a 1B or a 1E. But anyway, so A and B are basically remote, portable, running on emergency power. A is going to be 3 or more people participating. So 3 or more people operating. B is going to be 1 or 2 people. So if you're by yourself up on a mountain somewhere, you're going to be 1B. If you had maybe a larger group with 2 radios set up and 3 or more people working, you would be a 2A. So the number is the number of transmitters that you're using simultaneously, not the number that you're using total. So if I sit out in my backyard and I've got 6 different radios, but I only operate 1 at a time, I'm just a 1. I'm not a 6. It's about the number that you have in operation simultaneously. So that's how to think about that. Another thing that's confusing sometimes for people is, what is mobile? What is mobile? So if I load all my gear out in my truck and I drive to a field somewhere and I drop the tailgate down and I set everything up and I throw a wire up in a tree and I run the radio off the tailgate, is that mobile? And the answer is no. Actually, what mobile means is if you have a permanent radio and antenna set up in your vehicle, and you normally like drive around and can, use this radio, and you're not really changing much, if anything, for field day, then you're a C. You're probably a 1C, unless you have two transmitters going at once in your car. So that's mobile. If you stop somewhere and like set up and put up antennas and do a bunch of sort of things that you wouldn't normally do with your vehicle, then you're probably going to be a B, a Bravo station, rather than a mobile. So think of mobile as like, I've got a radio that's permanently installed in my vehicle. I normally use it, on a day-to-day basis in this configuration, or it's kind of a permanent configuration. And then we already talked about sort of the difference between D and E. So D is just your home station, like your existing antenna, your existing radio, and your normal, more or less normal setup. And then E would be the same thing, but you're running on a generator or you're running off battery power. So what does I sort of poked around the edges of this, but what is a field day exchange? So field day is great. It's a super simple contest. The exchange is simply your class, which is the number of simultaneous transmitters, and your class letter, and your ARRL section. So you can look up what your ARRL section is, but if you're staying in the state of Washington, it's pretty simple. If you're west of the Cascades, so if you're west of like Snoqualmie Pass or Stevens Pass, you're going to be Western Washington, WWA, Whiskey Alpha. And if you're east of the Cascades, you're going to be Eastern Washington, or EWA, Echo Whiskey Alpha. So it's pretty simple. If you go out of the state, Oregon, I think is just all Oregon, OR. But you can look at Idaho is also just ID. It's not split. But Washington is split into two halves, Western WWA and Eastern EWA. So when you send your exchange for field day, when you make a contact with someone, you're going to send your exchange and get their exchange back. So for example, if I'm in my backyard running off battery power, I'm going to be 1 echo. So I might say, WA7DY 1 echo Whiskey Alpha, and then the other person is going to say, W1 ABC 3A CT, or Charlie Tango, like you see here. And that's going to be the exchange that you're going to record. So what you're capturing from the other person is simply their call sign, their class, and their section. And that's it. There's no serial numbers, there's no counting, there's no keeping track, there's no, I got to share my name or when I was first licensed. It's just class and section. Super simple. So again, if you were home on commercial power, you'd be 1 Delta Whiskey Alpha. If you were portable, not using commercial power, maybe it's just 1 or 2 people, you're a 1 Bravo. And then I don't know how that slide got in there. So remember the rules. There's a lot more to field day rules than what I talked about. Most of the complex rules affect large group operations, which isn't going to be you. But if you get a large group, maybe go to the ARL website, sort of skim through the field day rules. Again, most of them aren't really going to affect you. There are some opportunities for bonus points. I don't know if any of you would do it, but you can get some bonus points for operating off solar power or other renewable power, like if you have a windmill or a waterfall, maybe. If you do something so bad that public officials show up, you could get extra points for that, write their names down, things like that. Though it has to be elected officials. So that means in most counties, you need to do something so bad the sheriff shows up. But there are some opportunities for bonus points. You might want to review those. I think there's a few like running on solar renewable power is one that many people could probably get those bonus points. Most of the others have to do with more well-established field day operations, doing things like running get on the air station and things like that. But just skim those. I wouldn't worry about them too much. If you have a simple operation, you don't need to worry about it. You start getting a lot of people, multiple transmitters, spreading things out, you might want to just review the rules. So a couple options for logging, and we can see later on throughout the coming month if there's interest in maybe having another session to help you learn how to use these. But two logging options that we kind of collectively recommend to club members. as being good for field day. The first one is N1MM, which is free. It has been updated even for this year's field day. So it doesn't cost anything. We would, one recommendation I would make is just pay a little of attention when you're installing it. There's a little bit of fiddliness when you're installing it, but it's relatively easy to install. And as you can see from the screenshot that I have there, it's super easy to use for field day. Super, super easy. It's a really simple program. So once you get it up and running, you can just log like crazy, and it'll generate the log files that you need to upload to the ARL when you submit your score at the end. Another option that the club recommends is N3FJP. So this software has been updated for field day. However, it is not free. It costs $9 for the field day only version. I forget what it costs for the everything version. It's like $30 or $40. It is simpler to install, a little simpler to set up, and maybe, depending on your preferences, maybe a tiny bit simpler to use. They're both very simple to use. It is what the club uses at field day. So if that means anything to you, I don't know. I've used both. To me, they seem about the same, but I'm a little more technical. The one thing that's nice about the N3 FJP is when you put it in field day mode, it will keep track of the sections that you've worked, which is kind of neat. If you're trying to get as many sections as you can, that's kind of neat to see that in real time. It also has some pretty good charts and graphs. So if you get going crazy and you're making a ton of contacts, you can see kind of your rate and look at the charts and graphs. So you get some good stuff for $9. But again, either one of these N1MM or N3FJP, both solid options that won't do you wrong. There's a lot of other loggers out there that support the format that the ARL needs. Last year for field day, I just logged. I have Ham Radio Deluxe. I just logged right into Ham Radio Deluxe. It's kind of overkill for field day, but it worked. It worked fine. So there's lots of other options, but those are just two, N1MM and N3FJP, two options that we recommend as being easy to use and definitely will work for field day. So when is field day? So field day is always the last full weekend in June. So for us, that means it starts on Saturday, June 26th at 11 a.m. and it ends the following Sunday at 11 a.m. There's some other rules about when you can start setting up, how long you can spend setting up. Those are in the rule books. The general rule of thumb, or what we do within the club, is we just start setting up the 24 hours prior, and then you can do whatever you want. You don't need to worry whether you're breaking the rules or not. So that would be my recommendation. That seems to be the easiest. That way, if at 6 a.m. on Saturday morning, you realize, you set the tower up crooked or something, you can go fix it and you don't have to worry about breaking the rules. If you want, you can review the rules. You do have an ability to start setting up earlier, even on Thursday if you want, but then you have certain maximum amount of time you can spend on setup activities, and it starts to get a little more complicated. Not impossible, but a little more complicated. So our recommendation, I think, just from having done it so many times, is start setup sometime after 11 a.m. on Friday, and you'll be fine. You don't have to worry about anything. You'll be within the rules and the spirit of it. So it runs for 24 hours. It does go overnight. It does not stop, but it is kind of nice in our time zone because it's 11 a.m. to 11 a.m. So it's a bit civilized. We get a nice, you get a relaxed start to it. So I mentioned earlier about submitting your results and recording them as part of the club. So when you submit your results, you'll do them via web form. It's pretty easy to find, but this is the URL for it. And results have to be submitted basically within a month after the end of field day. So you have to submit them by July 27th. You can do them via that web form. It's pretty simple. It's pretty easy. We did the same presentation last year, and I think I got emails from maybe 2 people who were having a little confusion, but it was pretty easy to sort out. So I think it's a pretty good experience, not too hard to do. Remember, if you can, when you submit your results, there's going to be a field that's going to say club or group name. And what we want you to put in there is Mike and ampersand, Mike and key ARC. just like you see right here. And I will share this information in the other emails that I'm going to send to the group. But if you can use that exact name, Mike and Key ARC, that'll ensure that all of your points will get contributed to the club points. And the thing that was interesting last year is our distributed operations actually put up, I think, almost as many points as we would normally do as a group. So the impact that you guys can have in representing the club can be really significant. I mean, even if you're like me, I think I submitted, I don't know, maybe 300 points, something like that. You know, it wasn't a lot, but all of those really added up. So I would encourage you, even if you just make a few contacts, you know, even if you don't feel like, you know, I didn't really do that much. You know, I would encourage you to go submit your results and use the club name, because the little bit adds up pretty quick. And we would love to see, you know, the club participation, you know, be as high as last year, if not higher, this year. So please remember that. Again, this Mike and Key ARC, that'll be in my future communications about this as well. So I mentioned earlier about signing up as a host. So I have a URL here. If any of you want to take a picture of the QR code, it'll take you to a Google form where you can submit some basic information. If you're interested in being a host, just, you know, let me know. And then I will be sharing the submissions back out to the group throughout the coming weeks, so everybody will know and you can start to kind of make the right connections. One thing to note, and the form asks you this, you know, just let us know kind of roughly what type of operation you're planning on running. You know, if you're planning on being, you know, very like CW only, or you want to do a bunch of digital, or you want to get a bunch of people and try to make some satellite contacts, or, you know, let us know what your focus is, and what you're planning to do, and maybe a little bit about what equipment or help that you might need. So just let us know. I'll be sharing that information back out to the group. I'll also be sending this link out later today, so everybody has it. So if you miss it now, don't worry. I'll have a email going out to the list with this link. So if you want to, again, this is for hosts. So hosts will sign up, we'll share this information back out, and then people can contact the hosts individually and do that coordination. So with that, do we have any questions? Anything I can try to answer the confusion I've created?
Yeah, David, there was a question by Siobhan. Siobhan, why don't you go ahead?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm super excited for field day. This will be my very first one ever attempted. And I was just filling out the host form because I could probably host 6 to 12 folks. So that's exciting. My question is, and maybe you said it, I didn't quite understand. You said Washington is divided. How is it divided? For example, I have a ham friend in Walla Walla, and I have a new ham friend in the San Juans, and then I'm in Redmond. So how would that be divided? And then if we were all at the same location, is it the location or where we from? How does that work?
Yeah, great question. Great question. Yeah, thank you for asking that, because I think some of us have been doing this so long, you know, we just kind of forget what was confusing when we started. So the section that you'll use will be based on the location from which you're operating. So wherever you're operating from. So if you travel, say, to Eastern Washington, you would use the section of where your field day operation literally is, rather than maybe where you're from. So even if your call sign, you know, if somebody looked up your call sign and said, wait a minute, you know, they live in Redmond, why are they saying Eastern Washington? That doesn't matter. It's going to be where you are. The division of Washington State has 2 ARL sections, has Western and Eastern, and the dividing line would be the Cascades. So basically, if you're west of Snoqualmie Pass, west of Stevens Pass, on the western side of the state, so Redmond, San Juans, you would be Western Washington. If you were east of the Cascades, like Walla Walla or Ellensburg or Spokane, you would be Eastern Washington, or EWA.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you so much.
That was it for questions from the chat. If anybody's got questions, just go ahead and pipe in.
David, Sam in 7RHE, I believe the field day setup print is 1,000-foot diameter circle, not radius.
Diameter. Yeah, I think you might be right. I don't know. Did I say 1,000 foot? But anyway, it's a lot. It's big. When we do field day at Fort Flagler, the circle is large enough that we can have people up on the bluff and people down on the beach, and they seem really far apart, but they still fit easily inside that circle. So, so I say the what I mentioned earlier would apply. If you have a single transmitter in a single location, don't worry about the rules. They're not complicated for you. If you get something more complicated going on, where things are further apart, you have multiple transmitters operating at the same time, that type of thing, then you would definitely want to review the rules.
David, one other thing I wanted to add in, for those of us that aren't going to go out and just hang around the house and do things from their house, again, this year, due to COVID, we will have the Zoom room open, and we'll be using we'll hijack the daily rag chew, and we'll have that like we did last year to, hey, I'm over on this band, come and talk to me, or spotting, I guess.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. I mean, I guess if you're truly portable, that might be hard to do. Yeah, it was fun. I did field day out on my back deck, so it's like I was on the Zoom in the rain. But it was pretty neat, and we had some good conversations. And one of my favorite, I think this will be one of my new favorite field day memories, was when Jay taught me how to log digital context directly into my logging software. That was life-changing. And apologies to everybody who's sitting back saying that's not ham radio, but still.
Good stuff.
Pretty good, yeah.
David, could you quit sharing?
Could I quit sharing? Sure. One last thing. If anybody has any other questions, we have an email alias. You can email fieldday@mikeandkey.org. That'll go to me. I think that might go to Ivy. If you have any questions at all, just drop me a line there. I'll be happy to answer them. So that's just fieldday@mikeandkey.org.
Great. Thanks, David.
All right.
All right. If there's no other questions, I guess we'll hand it back over to El Presidente.
Well, since there's no more questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording for our presentation, and we'll turn it back into a temporary chat until we do the meeting side. So let me stop the recording.